Hey gang, I've got a comparison video for you today. I've got three knives of very similar scope and with the same sort of category of use and price category, and I'm going to compare them. So these three knives are what I would call pure everyday carry knives. So they're not big enough to be really used as a, I don't know, defensive blade or a hard use blade or anything like that. You know, they're 3-inch blades between sort of 2.5 to 3.5 ounces, and all sort of better iterations of original knives as well. So they do have a few things in common. So you've got the Cold Steel 2015 Recon 1. This was the update of the Recon 1 that first came out in about 2009 or so. On there's the drop point variety. You've got the Benchmade Griptilian. This is the 5561, I think. Yeah, 5561. This is the upgrade as well from 2016. Then you've got the Spyderco Native 5 Lightweight, and this is a 2015, early 2016 variant as well, with the reduced weight and new steels. So all of these knives are between 150 Australian dollars and 250 Australian dollars. So they're getting towards the higher end, or at least the upper middle part of the everyday carry knife market. They're all one-handed opening knives. None of them are flippers, so they're a bit more measurable against each other. A couple of different locking systems, some different steels, different materials. I'm going to break them down into areas. I'm going to assign points like I like to do, and sort of give you an overall indication of which one I think is the best if you had to choose just one of these knives. I must preface though, any of these would be a great one knife for life. I think I have a preference. Whether my scoring system reflects that preference, we'll have to have a look. Alrighty, so let's start with the blades. We're going to rank the blades against each other. I'll look at them all, let you know which one is best. So taking into account blade quality and use, I use the tip, I use how it slices, and I use how it deploys, the ease of deployment as well. So what I did for slicing and just general utility use, a really good way of testing not only cutting but slicing. There's a difference between cutting and slicing. Cutting is cutting a piece of paper, like this is cutting, and any sharp knife will cut. Slicing, however, is when the rest of the knife, as in from this part to this part, starts to have to be called into action to work. So what I did was I set a hard-boiled egg down on a chopping board, and without holding the egg, and purely by pushing down with the knife, I saw how they sliced through. And my conclusions from that, and also with slicing some tomatoes, are that, as I suspected, the Spyderco Native 5 has the best blade. For general everyday carry use, slicing, cutting has probably the nicest, finest tip out of all of them as well. Following that, I actually found that the Cold Steel Recon Scout, with its high hollow ground blade, actually seemed to slice a little bit better than the Benchmade 940 with its lower saber ground. It's not 940, sorry, Mini Griptilian 5561 with its lower saber ground blade, which I guess when you look at the matter of geometry isn't too surprising. So the maximum points, which say 3 points, will go to the Spyderco, 2 points to the Cold Steel, and 1 point to the Griptilian there. Looking at steel and materials involved in the knife. So the Cold Steel Mini Recon has the CTS XHP upgrade in steel, a vastly superior upgrade to AUS8, which it used to be, and you've got a G10 handle and just a stainless steel clip and lock assembly. The Griptilian here has a G10 handle, which is like a plastic that they apply in layers, resinous plastic, and it's got a CPM 20CV steel, which is a very similar recipe to a fairly popular high-end knife steel called Bowler M390. It's a powder metal. All three of these are powder metals, so they're all quite high quality knife blades. This one here is a Spyderco with FRN as the handle. You've got a stainless steel clip here, and you've got CPM S110V as the blade. So that's one of the higher, newer knife steels made by Crucible and used in common pocket knives. When I think of these knives together, I'm starting to navigate away from the absolute edge holding is the best, because when it comes to that, it would probably be this knife here, but this knife is getting to the point where it's really unwieldy to sharpen. I have got a good edge back on this, but it was not easy. It's a very, very difficult steel to work with, the 110V, and it's probably the most difficult steel I've had to work with. It just feels like on my stones, on my bench stones, it just doesn't feel like I'm doing a great deal. It takes a long time, and I'm always trying to hesitate from going to the really rough stones, but yeah, I like to just maybe go 700 at the coarsest and start there. That took ages. On the plus side of the CPM 20CV, it's got really good edge holding capabilities, but it is easy to reset the edge as well. It's quite a good steel to sharpen, I found, in this particular Benchmade as well. And then CTS XHP, one of my favourite steels. It's got good edge holding capability, better than most other steels still. Like, it's, in my opinion, it seems to hold longer than S30V, and it seems to hold longer than VG10, and it seems to hold longer than the Super Gold powder steel that I have in my Falconhaven U2, but it's also really, really good to sharpen. It's no worries at all. I've had a lot of experience with sharpening it on my American Lawman, which is one of my more commonly used knives. I use it all the time. And XHP, it won't hold the edge as long as either of these two, I don't think. But because it's easy to sharpen, I'm putting this in first place, this in second place, and the CPM 110V in third place. Handles we go on to next. So a few things you look at with handles: comfort, is in comfort to hold, lack of hot spots, and traction, how securely it's going to stay in your hand. So, I think the most comfortable handle is the Griptilian's handle. It's getting on the small side, so I think if you had any bigger hands than me, this might drop down past these other two, but for me, this handle here, squeezing onto that, feels about as good as you want a knife to feel when you're using it just for everyday tasks. Yeah, it's not going to have a foot on the end that's going to lock your hand or anything like that, but for everyday tasks, it's sort of got that warmth that G10 provides, a bit smoother, so it's not super rough and grippy, and just the general shape of it's quite simple and quite ergonomic. So I'm going to put that as my favourite grip. The next favourite grip I would suggest, it feels to me like the Recon one. Just squeezing this one versus squeezing this one, there's a few more corners and flattened off portions on this knife here that just make it a little bit less comfortable. Not an uncomfortable knife at all, and it is nice that you can choke up forwards like that. However, on these smaller knives, I don't find those distances to be too great to absolutely require a forward finger choil. When you're getting towards your 3.5 inch blades where you get those, a proper void between your knuckle and the start of the blade, that's when you want these choke up points for sure, these choils. But that aside, it doesn't make quite enough of a difference for me to enjoy this handle more than this handle. So second best bronze medal there to the Spyderco. The Pocketability, how to retain the knife in your pocket. This one here goes, the first one is the Griptilian with, not only because it's got its nice deep carry pocket clip, that is that's a winning feature, but it is a narrower knife than the other two as well. And I'm all about the narrowness of the knives. It's a lot narrower than the Spyderco, and a fair bit narrower than the Recon one. So that's the best pocketable knife. The weights in these are also similar, that it doesn't really, this is the lightest knife, but these aren't heavy knives, so this doesn't gain a great deal of ground back either. However, it is my second favourite, the Spyderco Native. Second best to carry, because it is lighter and the clip is better, goes into your pocket easier. This has the Recon one famous super grippy G10, which isn't as rough as I thought it was going to be. It's a little bit rougher than the American Lawmans, but not a great deal. But then just the really tightly sprung pocket clip. And I am going to adjust this, but this is kind of just what you get from the box. And it's a tricky knife to force onto your pocket, that's for sure. The lock. Locks, locks, locks. Now, should it just be this by default because it is the strongest lock? No. I'm a firm believer that lock strength really doesn't matter with small knives like this. I'm not using them for hard purposes. I don't even know what kind of a hard purpose you really need. Anything more than a most rudimentary lock back, or anything to keep the blade open from accidental spine wax or accidental knocks to the top. Anything other than that, I'm really not sure why they need to be so super strong. My favourite lock is the Axis lock. It's fun to play with. It's certainly strong. There's no blade play or anything like that. It's got a fair bit of adjustability, so if you don't like it to flipping all over the place, you just tighten the pivot and it becomes a little bit more traditional, just open it with a thumb. But otherwise you can loosen it up and you can jiggle it around, you can flick it up. It's a good lock and it's a fun lock to use. So again, the Benchmade. I would give the highest points for having the best lock out of these three, because best, in my opinion, doesn't mean strongest. However, when you're talking about these two knives, when it is more or less the same mechanism, I would suggest it makes sense to say that Cold Steel have the best built backlock, because a triad lock is just a backlock but with an extra bar to give a triple the strength or whatever they say happens. So I mean, really, deployment isn't an issue with either of them. Both of them deploy like lockback, so as in there's you can't flick either of these knives open. So I'll give the second place to the Cold Steel, but the Spyderco it's very, very close, because it's just pretty much the same. Just knowing this one's stronger, I guess it makes sense to give it the second place. Looks. This is where it starts to become a little bit more, a little bit less scientific. Not that this has been a scientific video, but which do you think is the best looking knife? Oh yeah, they're all quite different, really, aren't they? If you like Spydercos, you probably think the Native 5's are a really good looking Spyderco. The Benchmade's got these cool little flourishes of blue and but it's for a very kind of basic looking knife, and I don't think any of them are particularly really handsome looking knives. Not like my traditional folders or anything like that, where it's they're made to look lovely, or even the titanium frame lock folders with the nice smooth titanium. I don't think any of these are stunners. I think the best looking one, just overall, just from purity of form, I think it might be the Benchmade, just from having just this nice blue inlay there, nice sort of simple look, nice looking knife blade there. Maybe followed by the Cold Steel, just because it's quite a cool looking knife. This is all black. I like the aesthetic. It's not too bad. Nice sort of drop point, clip point style. A little bit ugly with the branding though, so it's kind of what's really thrown this one up in the air for me. But it doesn't really matter how a knife looks anyway. But in terms of, I'd give this the lead just from not having any actual flaws and having a bit of nice detailing. But the rest of these two here, they're sort of just very much practical tools. This is less garish in the branding, but it's got that odd Spyderco look to it, whereas this, don't know, it's a tricky one. I'll probably just withdraw from putting points onto that one. Next is the fit and finish. All these knives came really well fit and finished. In fact, the Cold Steel had absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. The Benchmade has a little bit of laminate bleed with the G10. I did ask Benchmade, and it is separate G10 layers, but in the same piece of G10. So they must just make huge blocks of it with like the bottom two laminate layers of being this blue stuff. So you're really grasping at straws here when you go into fit and finish of these knives, because they all came really well finished. The Spyderco would probably be third, because there's a few just little ratty bits of plastic just coming off of it, and that's just part of using FRN as a handle material. The next category is really important to me, and that is fun factor, gadget factor. And it's how fun they are to carry and how fun they are to play with. So while none of these have that crazy level of flipper fun, I'd have to give it to the Benchmade just for that cool axis lock. Makes it a very Moorish knife to keep taking out and fiddling with. Do really enjoy this one. The next two, I think the gadget factor's there with the Cold Steel's lock and just its general sort of rugged appearance. The Spyderco is just a very simple, basic Spyderco. Both of these really, you leave in your pocket and they stay there. You get them out when you need to use them, but you're not getting them out for fun like you do when you've got more of a fidgety knife like this one. The last category is value, and this is where I know it's been a very... yeah, this is the winner. I've been heaping praise on this knife because it is a really good refinement and a really good knife overall. However, value, Cold Steel scoops it. Absolutely. It's got materials that are really comparable to this knife here. Just as complex, it's got that 3-piece lock, just like this says. I guess it's got an extra spring in it. And it's about $100 less. So this is about $153 in Australia, and this is about $246 or so right now. So for $100 less, you're getting a really good steel, and you're getting really good G10. It's the same. About the same level of manufacturing. This is an American-made knife, and this is a Taiwanese-made knife, so that's really what you're paying for, which to me isn't really indicative of value because the fit and finish is as good on each of these really. This one here, the FRN is quite a cheap material. S110V is probably an expensive steel to use and work with at the moment, but I just don't see, this is a $210 knife, I don't see this being as valuable as this or as this, so this is the winner there. And then I'd probably put this new recipe of steel and the G10 as the second, and then the sort of cheaper plastic and the S110V third. But again, the second two aren't really important. This is just a really high value knife. Really, really a lot of bang for your buck there in Australia in the Cold Steel Recon. Alright, so if I assigned 3 points for best, 2 points for middle, and 1 point for sort of the third place in each of these categories, the clear winner is the Benchmade. On about 22 to 24 points when I sort of jig them around a little bit, it's a clear winner. The Cold Steel is then the second, and it comes a fair few points back, being consistently in second or third place, hitting it around 16 to 17 when I sort of fudge the numbers and move them around a bit. And then the Native 5 does come last, but only sort of just, so it seems to get about 14 or 15 or so. When you add everything together, lots of these were subjective things, but I think when you look at the basics, the things like the steels you get for the money, how fun they are to play with, and how good they are at actually slicing, you really do get something good with each of these knives. And I think if you chose any of these, you wouldn't have any real reason to bemoan not choosing the other one, or if you just got two of them, the third one wouldn't really make your collection complete or anything like that, because you'd have enough knife to do just about everything. In terms of rolls, I think if you're working somewhere a bit rougher or a bit more rugged of a knife was to be used, I guess this would be the one that you would choose. But in that situation, I'd probably just upgrade this to either the standard Recon or, in my opinion, the American Lawman, which is Cold Steel's best folding knife that they make. This one here, the best slicer without doubt, and probably, if you have a really good sharpening system, probably not as much of an issue sharpening, but I'm still back on stones here, so for me, kind of probably fairly puts it in third. And this Griptilian, it's just a refinement of a classic design that, even if I had a standard Griptilian here against these two, it would probably still do about as well. Might lose a couple of points in the cheaper handle material and the lower quality steel, but really, the Griptilian is just a world-beating design, it really is. So that's why I've put it at number 1. Alright dudes, thanks for chatting, thanks for listening to me ramble, and I hope you enjoy this little knife rundown. So if you have a choice between these three, which these three I do think are the 3 big companies that make this level of folding knife, I think this is their best offerings. I look at things from Kershaw and CRKT and things like that. They do seem to sort of stay below the $100 mark fairly well, unless you're really getting, in Australia, price gouged a bit. But CRKT, Kershaw, Boca, they kind of have their ranges too eclectic, whereas I'd suggest that these three are the kind of the pivotal knives in this category. Going cheaper, it would be the Delica versus the Voyager versus the standard Griptilian, but in this category here, I think these three are about as good as the production market's got to offer at the moment. Alright, that'll be that. I'll see you all in the next video. Ta-ta!